Real quick, if you're into what we talk about here, you'll probably love the free stuff we've got waiting for you at papernapkinwisdom.com. Tools, templates, all that good stuff. It's free. Just ask. You can even head over to social. The link's in the bio.
Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom, where we share pearls of wisdom shared by some of the world's top entrepreneurs, leaders, and difference makers. Here's your host, Govindh Arya Maan.
Hi, I'm Govindh Arya Maan, and this is Paper Napkin Wisdom, episode 288. Have you ever looked back at your younger self and wondered, what if the world had been just a little different? What if the spaces you lived in, the opportunities you had, or the examples you saw were exactly what you needed most? That's the powerful question today's guest, Katy Spada, brings us. Katy's the founder of Arya Maan, a lifestyle brand rooted in heritage, storytelling, and intentional design. But beyond the business, her journey is about something much deeper. Building the kind of world she wished existed for her younger self and for those who come next. In our conversation, Katy shares how motherhood, entrepreneurship, and culture have all collided to shape not just her company, but her mission. And as you listen, you may find yourself thinking, what part of the world am I building for myself, for my family, and for the generations that follow? So grab a pen, maybe even a napkin, and join me as we uncover the wisdom behind Katy's simple and profound reminder. Let's listen in. Hi, Katy. Welcome to Paper Napkin Wisdom. I'm excited to have you here today.
Hello, Govindh. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, so we talked about this in the green room before we began, but I'm personally very interested in your company and what you're doing. We're going to get into all of that, my personal bias towards it, but you shared a really interesting napkin, which I believe deeply in. So I'm going to read it out to everybody, and we're going to dig right in. Build the world you wish existed for your younger self and for those who come next. Why did you share that with me?
Yes, I think becoming, a mother of two kids, ages 7 and 4, and, an accidental entrepreneur, as I refer to it, I've reflected a lot on the taking ownership over the life that I wanted to create for myself. I think as a kid, I was kind of a daydreamer and would write these stories about these fantastical worlds and all the things I would have. And then having children, it's like I really wanted to create the childhood for them that I always wanted. And as they're kind of growing and becoming their own people, realizing that they actually have their own identities and their own opinions and the childhood that they want. And so kind of separating those two between who am I creating it for? It's not just for them. It's not just for myself, but there's still a vision and the beauty of what I wish to see in the world. And then demonstrating for them, like taking that ownership of not just dreaming about it, but like, let's actually do it. And what does it create? What does it take to actually start a business or to take that trip or to build that little free library? Like what steps do we need to take? How many problems are we going to encounter along the way? And how do we work together to solve them? So
I like that. And I like how you talk about it beyond daydreaming, right? I think a lot of us wistfully look out the window and picture of a world that we wish existed, but you're not just talking about the wish, you're talking about action too, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah. How do you actually make it happen? You can have like these beautiful pipe dreams and these visions, but what steps does it take to make that a reality is very different than just saying, oh, I wish this or this existed.
Yeah. So what did you wish existed?
So my business, Arya Maan, is culturally inspired pajamas. And as a multicultural family, we always celebrate Christmas and Diwali, and I'm looking for ways for them to feel equal in our home so that the kids never feel like a part of themselves is less than, which is really hard in capitalistic America where Christmas starts so early on and Diwali is kind of like a little blip. So I was always looking for ways for it to feel the same for them in our home. And one thing that we do is the matching family Christmas pajamas. And a few years ago, she was then 4-year-old said, "Mommy, where are my Diwali pajamas?" And they didn't exist. And I said, "Okay, well, let's figure out how to create them." And that's why I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, because here I am now, with multiple vendors and collections on the way and becoming a full-fledged clothing company, which is very different than like, let's go print some, a dia on a baby onesie and call it a day. So, but in that, it's the effort of showing them of like, okay, you had an idea, you had a need that you wanted to fulfill. What does it actually take to bring that to market? And how many other people have the same need or have the same desire, and share this belief with you?
Yeah. So it's interesting. We've had that conversation here, and it never resulted in pajamas, but we've always had that conversation because, like your family, we're similarly constructed, and we celebrate all of those holidays, Diwali and Christmas, and every year we have very unique celebrations for each one of them. And I love how you've brought them both together, and I love I love the product. I love what you're doing. But most importantly, I find it really inspiring about how you took this possibility, this idea that started in a conversation and turned it into action. Have you seen that change the way your kids look at the world because of the
Yes.
action?
Yes. Sometimes I worry because my daughter's always looking on how to monetize things.
That doesn't sound like a bad thing.
I was like, let's see how we can channel this in a positive way. But yes, she's constantly coming up with like, lemonade stand proposals at school and getting her workforce together and allocating jobs. So yes, it is kind of, has a very different lens of entrepreneurship and what it takes, to bring it to fruition, not just sitting there and daydreaming.
That's great. That's great. So other than monetizing it, how is she? How do you see her change her outlook on the world, or even look at challenges differently?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, she's also fully embracing this concept of fusion. So she's currently planning her own Halloween slash Diwali party and coming up with her own ideas. I think she was talking about taking little dias and putting candy in them and hiding them around the house for people to find. So, which was kind of the whole objective of like empowering them to understand their heritage, but define what that meant for them, and giving them that full authority for what that looks like. And so seeing that happen of like, yes, I'm half Indian and I'm half American. She had this whole conversation the other night about, oh, if I marry an Indian, then my children will be, and like she's doing the math and processing and just kind of embracing her identity.
That's that's
Yes.
great. That's really great.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the challenges of going beyond, a dia on a onesie. Um, I think that obviously, the clothing industry is one that's probably pretty saturated nowadays, especially with the way that people can customize things very easily.
Mhm.
How are you standing out in that crowd, and how does your purpose help you do that?
Yes. If I had done my due diligence, I would not have started this business. So it is a capital intensive, long lead time, saturated market. And so I think almost kind of like not knowing all of that gave me the freedom to really dive in. I originally wanted to start low risk. I was just going to do print on demand. Let's test silhouettes, sizes without having to carry inventory and and the risk associated with that. And very quickly learned that the only print on demand blanks are like t-shirts and hoodies. And they didn't have the pajama silhouette that I love to buy for my kids. And I was really approaching this from a consumer standpoint of, what do I want to go buy? What's the quality of the construction and the fabrics and prints? And so found my way to a brand launch consultant, and we launched our first round, but then trying to get to the next one, he just ultimately wasn't delivering. We didn't have great communication, wasn't meeting the timelines. And so I had to pivot to somebody else, which ultimately delayed launches along the way. And now we're coming up to our next one and getting hit with India tariffs. And I just kind of keep going back to a saying. I'm a huge follower of Tony Robbins, and he says, success is a series of solved problems. You want bigger success, you need bigger problems. So I joke that I'm making really big problems for myself. We're just going to knock them out one by one and figure it out. Something I tell my kids constantly is all problems can be solved. They can all be solved. We just have to be clever and think differently, and we'll find a way. So
yeah, that's well said. And also you said you're making problems for yourself. I think you're discovering problems by foraging for the opportunity, and I think there's something there. The other thing is, Diwali, for those of you who don't understand, is an annual celebration, and the timeline changes based on the astrological calendar. So it like Christmas, it happens once a year. The timing is a little bit off, and it can be anywhere between late October and late November, actually. So with that in mind, and thinking about that seasonal nature, those challenges can have put a lot of pressure on your product because there's a window. Right?
Yes, a very small window that shifts and doesn't follow the normal retail calendar, which could serve in my advantage. We're still kind of figuring it out. I know when we were trying to run ads previously and coming up against the traditional holidays like Father's Day, Memorial Day, we didn't have enough budget in our ads to compete with those. So having potentially being off cycle of some of these other holidays may actually serve us. But yeah, it's a constantly moving target of what is our selling period, and we're still figuring that out, which is also why moving forward I'm coming out with some non-seasonal collections that can try to help keep moving the business along and kind of meet the same demand. But yeah, with our Diwali collection, it's a very narrow selling period.
Yeah. So talk about sourcing. One of the things that I've noticed about a lot of companies that source from India, especially smaller organizations, quality control can be pretty tricky. And not to say that India doesn't make quality products, it makes high quality products. Yeah. But the challenge is the consistency of the product may not always meet the North American standard for those things. How have you been able to deal with those challenges?
Yeah. And that's critical for me. The whole goal of this vision is that it meets the same quality standards as your other clothing. We say it's like I'm Indian on the weekends and American on the weekdays. And I have these two separate closets. It's like, I want to eliminate that. It's like my kids open their drawer and they see all of them in one place. So having the same exact quality is very key. And so we're doing that with the production partners that I have found, which have a lot of experience. They've got their processes in place. Now, that does come with a cost and a timeline. I've learned along the way how many steps there really are involved in creating a product that I think I'm like, oh, just take that. I just want to create this, like just copy paste. But there's so many decisions along the way. So I have really, really good partners that we have very frequent communication, lots of samples being sent back and forth, and then trust as well.
That's great. Mm-hmm. So developing and maintaining those relationships from so far away can be challenging. And let's talk about the design side of it. How have you guided yourself on design? I mean, Dia's, for those of you who don't know, they're the clay lanterns with a little wick with a light, because Diwali is the celebration of the victory of light over darkness. So light plays a really strong role in all of this, and And so you've, obviously the image of the lights and the diyas on pajamas is an easy one, but beyond that, where the designs come from?
Yes. I get bouts of inspiration. I think it's part of my perspective of almost being an outsider of the culture, of seeing the beauty that there is in the different holidays and celebrations and traveling to India. So some of our future collections coming out are like the auto collection, which we have on some homeware stuff, of just making it very like fun and whimsical and a celebration of something that is unique. And so I come up with the ideas, and then I do work with usually Indian designers and then actual textile designers to bring them to life. And I've learned a lot along the way too, because Indian designs are so detailed. And so the level of detail that you can do in a drawing versus what you can print onto cotton is very different. And so we've had a lot of iterations along the way of like, how can we capture the essence of that detail, but still have it print clearly, that it doesn't kind of look like a muddy mess.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so that's again, having the right process in place, the right people, the right checkpoints, making sure that we're staying culturally authentic. I've got the hive mind that I refer to, and kind of like, does this resonate with you? Does it not? How do you think about this? Someone told me very early on to stay away from the Hindu gods and religion. I was like, okay, totally get that. I'm not about to wear pajamas with Jesus's face on them, so completely get that. So, what are some other that are other iconic images that just kind of spark joy when you see them?
Yeah, I'm smiling when I look at your images of auto rickshaws and in various shapes and sizes, on pillows and cups. I think it's amazing. So, you also said something that I think is really interesting, and I mean, maybe this is something that I need to talk to my wife Stacy about every now and then. Is you said coming as an outsider of the culture gave you a unique perspective, but have there been challenges in coming at it as an outsider as well? Like,
Yes.
have you faced some obstacles along that way?
Yes, yes. Constantly imposter syndrome, asking myself, like, who am I to represent this culture? There are often times where standing at a booth and people will ask me, like, so why are you doing this? Like, why are you involved in this? And, a constant feeling that I have to like justify my interest in this world. But I've really kind of embraced that because I have the different contexts. That's what really perfectly suits me to do it, because I have that kind of different lens, as well as the experience of like Western clothing my whole life and the quality that I demand.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So,
Zippers should not break after the first wearing. The blouses that you don't really quite fit. So.
yeah, yeah. That's again, people who are aware of Indian culture are all laughing at the blouses that don't quite fit.
Yes.
Because even as a guy, I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
So I think that's really interesting. So I'm remembering a story once when Stacy was at a checkout, I think with the kids, even not even doing something like this, but at a checkout with the kids, they were asking her, the person at the checkout was asking Stacy if she was the nanny of these kids, right? And she says, no, I'm the mother. And that was the image that was coming into my head when you were talking about being at the booth, right? And I can imagine that would have added extra complexity and challenge to what you've created here. So, what are how have you dealt with what's the feedback you get from other Indian families?
They love it. And I think that is really what drives me to continue doing it. I recently kicked off a little, like, I call it a faux podcast series of culture and conversations, where I was like actually sitting down with a lot of my friends and having these in-depth conversations. And it was all very validating of, yes, to see these Indian motifs in a Western context was so empowering for them, to get images of the kiddos in their Diwali pajamas in April, and the parents joking that it's Diwali every day around here, and these are their favorite pajamas. They don't want to wear any others. Or when it's pajama day at school and they want to wear these, and then they're explaining the concept of the Diya to their teachers and how proud that makes their parents to see their kids embracing the culture in this way. So it really just kind of reinforces what I'm doing. And that's the motivation to keep solving all the big problems we keep causing. So just knowing that it really is fitting a need for people to feel fully themselves. Is it?
Yeah, I'm kind of even getting a little, that hit me a little bit harder because when I was thinking about it, when I went to public school for the first time, so I went to Montessori up until a certain age, and then after that, I went to public school. And when I went to public school, I was the only brown kid in the entire school, entire elementary school. There was nobody else. And I didn't want to wear anything that made me look any more different than everybody else. And the world's changed amazingly. And my kids have that same shared idea where they're proud to bring their Indian clothes to school, and they're proud to celebrate Diwali publicly and openly. And I think it's powerful that you're giving people the ability to be able to do that in a way that they could participate. And it's amazing to reflect on that change, isn't it?
It is. It's very exciting. Although I still hear, like, when people talk about the concept of a dual identity, they still have this like half glass full perspective of, I'm too American to be Indian. I'm too Indian to be American. And when I hear that, it honestly like breaks my heart. And I really want to eliminate that from the dialogue for all dual identities, of just it fully embracing all of who they are and empowering them to define what that means of what it means to have this heritage background, and what holidays do you celebrate and how do you celebrate them. I used to hear a lot from people like, oh, we can't celebrate Diwali here because it's just not the same. You just don't have the people. And I've met families with grown children who said, yeah, we never celebrated Diwali and I wish we could have. And the parents saying, oh, it's just not the same here. We just can't do it. And it's like, create your own traditions. Like, what does it mean to celebrate to you, and feel empowered to do that in your own way and show up in the way that you want to.
So one of the things, as an entrepreneur, I always, and even when I'm coaching organizations, we'll always talk about celebrate the win. Like, what's the celebrate? And plan the celebration before you start the project, right? So what's the celebration going to look like after you achieve the goal? What's the target? What's the goal? What are you raising a glass to? What does a celebration look like? And I think having a strong picture of what winning looks like is really great. And you lit up when you were talking about celebrating Diwali. Is celebration a big part of who you are? Was that part of it too for you?
Yes. Yes. I think I almost thought about starting an event company, but I didn't want to deal with other people's ideas. I love throwing parties. And I love celebrating, and I love creating that environment for people to connect and find their joy. And I honestly feel like that's just kind of what life's about. That's why I'm laughing about my daughter planning a party. And it's like, oh yes, because she's just seen me do it over and over again. But yes. And, celebrating the wins throughout business, that also like feeds in. Like, I will celebrate every little win. Like, every time the Shopify ding goes off on my phone, it's like, yay, we're pleasing another person. And we just had a photo shoot for our new collection, and seeing the images coming out, it's like, this is the vision I had in my head, and seeing it like in real life, and the amount of work that it took to get that photo shoot, the amount of products shipping overnight from India to Michigan to Seattle back to Chicago, like, where it's like, no, the amount of people and emails and texts of like, I need this now on this date, you will deliver. But then to sit and see that photo, it's like, we did it. We made it happen. There might be some color coding because the prototype and final is not quite there, but we made it. We made it happen. And celebrating each of those moments along the way.
That's great. That's really great. So how I love that you're celebrating those moments along the way. What's the next big goal? Where do you want to see Arya Maan end up? What's the
Yeah.
focus?
Yeah. And honestly, the more people I talk to, that like goalpost kind of shifts. I think it's amazing how much we limit ourselves by how big our dream is. And that if you just dream bigger, how much more you can achieve. I think I mentioned earlier, we've got the big Diwali collection coming out now, and I've got a couple of more non-seasonal and a holy collection in the queue. And I would really like this to grow potentially even beyond South Asian of just like a global citizen identity and exploring other cultures and interest areas um, to really embrace this idea of wearing our culture in a very comfortable way that feels celebrated. So lots of conversations about different distribution channels, and I have a target revenue goal in mind, and we'll just keep going as long as, and it's ultimately served by what's the demand, what does the market need, how can I serve the customers, and we'll just keep listening to those signals and continue to grow and pivot along that way.
That's great. I like what you said about we are often limiting how much or how big we can grow and how big and how much we can dream. What do you do to push the limits of that for yourself?
Mhm. A lot of it can be conversations with people. There's that expression of like, you are the average of the five people you spend your time with. I'm part of different like Entreprenista is a really big community for female entrepreneurs. And that has actually helped me dream so much bigger. And then meeting other mentors along the way. Um, so yeah, it's kind of getting outside of my box and seeing other people that have like paved the way and realizing that they're just as human as I am and they just dreamed up bigger problems and tried to solve them.
Yeah, so finding a community of people
Mhm.
who also are focusing on dreaming big, right?
Yep.
And changing
Hmm.
those
Hmm.
paradigms, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
Um, how would you? So you talked about how Aryan Mon could later be a bridge for other cultures. What's that vision look like?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about so my background. Growing up in California, there was a huge Hispanic population. And then I spent time in the Peace Corps in Africa. And I see a lot of opportunity in kind of the African context because they embrace these prints wholeheartedly. But the fabric is terrible. There's no stretch in it. It's so uncomfortable to wear. It's so hard to get on. The tailoring is just not quite there. And it feels like such a disservice to the people in the culture that like they want to embrace these prints, but they're so uncomfortable to wear. They're so impractical to wear. It's like, why can't we just put these on more comfortable clothing and um, improve the tailoring and so I see there lots of opportunities in some of these other cultures to kind of go conquer and see if there's a demand and interest there as well.
That's great. That's
Mhm.
great. Um, so around the end of every podcast, we've been honoring or shouting out a former contributor who suddenly passed away. His name was John Ruhlin. Wrote an incredible book called Giftology. And before he wrote it, he shared an incredible idea with us on a paper napkin, which is what you appreciate appreciates. And I think you've done that in your work. Um, but as a shout out to John and to pay forward his mission of appreciation and gratitude, I wondered if there was someone or some group of people that you'd like to shout out and recognize now with some appreciation.
Oh my goodness. The first one that comes to mind is my Bollywood dance company, Rangila. The founder, Priyanka Vora, and all those friends along the way. I could name them all, but they really have been my inspiration, my motivation, my hive mind support of fully embracing me as the only non-South Asian on the dance team. And allowing me to ask all the questions and working together on all of our dance projects. So that would be my shout out, that group.
That's a lot of fun. That's a great shout out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, Katie, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you, Govin.
What an incredible conversation with Katy Spada. Her reminder to build the world you existed for your younger self and for those who come next is one that pulls us all into deeper reflection. Here are a few key takeaways from today's episode. Your childhood dreams are a compass. They can guide you toward what you were always meant to build. Legacy starts now. Every choice you make is a living message to your children, to your team, and to your community. Entrepreneurship isn't always planned, but growth always requires ownership and intention. Authenticity matters. Culture, heritage, and story aren't extras. They're the foundation of your brand. Small actions create lasting impact. Legacy is lived daily and not only remembered later. Katy, thank you for sharing your story and your wisdom with us. Now I'd love to hear from you. What world are you building? Take a moment, grab a napkin, and write down your answer. And share it with us on social media using the hashtag Paper Napkin Wisdom. And if this sparked something for you, make sure to subscribe, review, and share Paper Napkin Wisdom with someone who needs to hear Katy's message today. And as always, remember, small ideas, when written down, can become the legacy that changes everything. Make it a great day.